Our fraudulent world is built upon consumption, constant consumption. As long as someone is buying, someone will manufacture, someone will create. But what happens when this cycle stops or slows down? You have a disruption in the system, one which has a pronounced ripple effect. China is selling off vast quantities of US debt, partnering up closer with Russia, and fighting some of its own challenges along the way. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we're going to get into China, most specifically with them selling off US debt. Now, I must interject and say that this isn't going to happen overnight. Remember that they own a large amount of US debt, and it is just not feasible for them to sell it all overnight. So let's begin with this. Out of Bloomberg, services sector grows at 8.4%, cushioning the industrial slowdown. I've been covering this as we have seen a decline in the Chinese economy, still in the positive territory according to their GDP, but of course has significantly slowed down. Even China themselves have admitted this. This is out of Bloomberg, showing you that China's economy expanded quicker than economists forecast in the third quarter as the services sector offset weaker manufacturing. So there are a couple things here. We have the weaker manufacturing. I've been bringing this up recently. Manufacturing is a huge deal. I'm going to show you in a moment why that's going to be a problem for the foreseeable future. Gross domestic product, or the GDP, rose 6.9% in the 3 months through September through a year earlier. So now think about this. They beat the economist estimate for 6.8%. So by a 0.1%, they beat the economist estimate. Now, it doesn't matter what is happening with the economy, with anything. As I've said before, it's all about expectations. If they beat the expectations, everything's going to be okay. And this is the joke that we're presented every single day. It doesn't matter if it's 2% or 10% or 100%. As long as the expectations are set, somehow everything is fine and dandy. Look at this. Look at the statistics out of Bloomberg showing you that China's holding of US treasuries going to a multi-year low right now at this time. And this is a trend that seems to be continuing practically every single month. But you have to look at the longer term trend here, as we do see since the year 2000, as this chart begins, they have obviously been purchasing more and more of the US debt. It's very clear. So to suggest that they're selling everything off today, it's not real, that's not true. Don't be swindled into thinking that. But understand that this is a trend that is seemingly like it's going to continue. We'll have to keep a close eye on this and see what happens. I certainly feel that something big is going to happen. The Russians are coming. 6-month moving average Chinese oil imports by source country. You could see particularly Russia in the recent past has really increased their oil being sent off to China. Very big news because, of course, they're constantly being partnered up on everything. One of those things is their currency swaps. They are consistently signing new agreements with increased amounts to essentially go away from the US dollar and into their own currencies. I've even seen trades take place that were essentially barter. Oil for gold, for example, not with Russia and China, but with other countries in the past. What we have is China attempting to diversify its portfolio. And I do believe they were overweight in US debt, but it seems like every country is finding itself overweight in US debt, but China in particular. This is what I wrote about in my book. It's a diagram, essentially just trying to show you exactly how this all works. If China wants to buy oil from Russia, they have to exchange their own currency for US dollars first. And this is not just China, but is for the whole world because of the US dollar being the reserve currency. So then they give the US their dollars to Russia. They're going to then receive the oil from Russia, and there's an exchange that's happening here. So US dollars for that particular commodity. It's no longer, I have money, I'm going to give it to you, and you're going to give me what I want, the product, basically. It's not like that. You have to exchange it into US dollars first. And that right there gives the US a monopoly. This has really changed the whole system and how it works. And it really does affect how things work in the global economy. But that is seemingly all changing right now. Now, this is more to what I was showing at the beginning, China retail sales value year over year. They say that things are looking bright. This is the way that the news skews this, but I like to zoom out. Even if it's only a few years back, zooming out, it's a term that I use to necessarily take what you're looking at and just step back. Just take one step back and look at it again, and take another step back and look at it again. And you'll find that those dots that you thought were connected are really just part of even more. And then you zoom out even more. Look at this. The retail comes off its lows and they celebrate it. But look how far down it's come. So you can't just go and use this little tiny piece of information. Okay, it was 6.9 instead of 6.8, and all of a sudden everything's fine. No, retail sales have come down significantly over the past few years. Why? Because the economy is hurting. This is one example. This is what is going to hurt everybody, you and I and those in China who have a large percentage of the population in manufacturing. Samsung and South Korea are taking aim at electronics manufacturing costs with a new investment in robots its hope will make mechanical men cheaper to operate even in jobs that currently need flexible human fingers. South Korea is already getting into this. China is into this. Many countries are using robotics and automation to eliminate the roadblock, and that is human beings. The ministry and Samsung are bold as brass about their aim. With wages rising in China, the pair reckon better bots could undercut the cost of human workers who today build devices like smartphones. If the plan works, South Korea stands to pick up business operating and or supplying factories to do the jobs that today require plenty of workers in China and other developing nations. They don't need us. They're trying to eliminate us. But the question is, who's going to buy their consumer junk if nobody's working? Well, there's many layers to this. I'm just going to ask that question, leave it up to you. Perhaps I need to do a whole video about that because I have my own thoughts about that and the so-called elite. Big contract manufacturers are very cost sensitive, so anything that reduces their outgoings will be welcome. That's right. Anything you can do, fire a whole bunch of people, buy a bunch of robots, do anything to get rid of their expenditures and increase the corporate profits. That's the name of the game. More in the article, but I need to move on. Fading factory work. There are 7.2 million fewer factory jobs than in 1979 when the industry saw a peak employment. So ever since then, ever since we had peak employment, all of a sudden everything's going down from there. The manufacturing is so crucial to the jobs because you can have such a large amount of the public working in those positions. One factory would employ several people. But of course, that's all changing right now, and we see that taking place not just with the offshoring of jobs, but with robotics and automation as well. I just wanted to add this one last article in here. You may have been following this. If not, here it goes. Los Angeles County prosecutors will not file charges against a Saudi prince arrested on suspicion of sexual assault at a compound at the edge of the Beverly Hills because of insufficient evidence. Now, I don't know what happened on that day. There's apparently some witnesses who saw an individual with basically scrambling. I believe they said that she had blood on her and everything. Now, I don't know myself what happened. I wasn't there, didn't see any particular evidence myself. But do you think for a second that an individual like a Saudi prince is ever going to face crimes, even if it was even more bold? This is how it works. The government is basically just a bunch of puppets, and they have in their positions, they have, let's say, for example, Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs keeps a few men in the government so they can pull the strings. JP Morgan the same. And all of the big bankers, all working for those who control the Federal Reserve. They all work together with the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF. If you think for a second that there's any dividing line, any border in between you and I, well, you have something else coming, because that's not the way this works. It's been a long time since the borders have been removed, since that line in between corporations and government have been there. That's all gone. That is completely something of the past. They can get away with anything they want. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, you're going to find my book, The Money GPS, even more informative. If you head over to Amazon, they have a look inside feature, which allows you to actually flip through the pages of the book and see if you like it. Take care.